YouTube seems to be the place for political discourse these days. Every week, thousands of YouTube users log on to express their opinion in an attempt to persuade others, provoke thought, and generally make the world a better place. And I love it. I watch a political video at least once a day and type dozens of comments a week. And over my many years of active engagement in the YouTube political realm, I've noticed a persistent pattern. Whether the commentator is conservative, liberal, or libertarian, I regularly notice that in most federal political issues, all sides of the debate make a certain critical oversight. In most cases, we all fail to address federalism and the 10th Amendment, and instead proceed to debate the merits of the policy. The 10th Amendment reads as follows: powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So basically, unless political issue X, Y, or Z falls under one of the powers granted to the federal government as listed in Article 1, Section 8, the federal government has no right to pass such a law on political issue X, Y, or Z. If you read Article 1, Section 8, you will quickly notice that most political issues today cannot be justifiably placed under any power on this short list. Take federal drug prohibition, for example. While it is true that the federal government can regulate commerce when goods or services are traded across state lines, according to the Constitution, the federal government is not allowed to pass laws in regards to possession or sale within a single state. In this regard, the Controlled Substances Act, as well as many other laws, are in blatant violation of the U.S. Constitution. Don't believe me? Remember prohibition. While the fact that prohibition was a failure is certainly an important lesson to learn, the more important and less debatable fact about prohibition was that it was an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. At the time, Congress respected the document. Knowing that banning liquor didn't fall under any of their enumerated powers, Congress did the only thing they could to legitimately outlaw alcohol. They changed the Constitution. This required overcoming hurdles that aren't required of conventional bills. First, 2/3 of both houses of Congress needed to vote to propose the amendment. Then, in order to ratify it, 3/4 of the state legislators needed to approve it. For some reason, Congress disregarded these requirements when they banned marijuana and a plethora of other drugs with the Controlled Substance Act in 1970. The Constitution hadn't been changed to allow such a ban in the time since Prohibition, so why were the lawmakers allowed to bypass the system when they wanted to ban another chemical? The answer is simply complacency. By 1970, federalism was no longer popular and voters didn't bother to hold lawmakers accountable for their digressions. Today, this complacency continues, and Congress passes law after law with total disregard for Article 1, Section 8, the 10th Amendment, and, well, the rest of the Constitution. With that history lesson in mind, I'd like to emphasize the purpose and importance of federalism and the 10th Amendment. Federalism is the antithesis to nationalism. Nationalism is the promotion of a strong, unified central government, while federalism promotes the idea that a federal government should only be put in place to maintain peace and free trade amongst a federation of states. Since we all have different political views, and none of us can honestly claim to be certain which political model works best, federalism enables states to experiment with different policies. Further, since popular opinion varies from state to state and within a state, federalism, both on a state and national level, guarantees better representation. Also, federalism empowers the people by making it easier to move to a jurisdiction whose laws better reflect their own opinions. If you don't like the local public smoking ban, you can move to a nearby city, county, or state where public smoking is legal. It's this freedom of choice that leads to the most important aspect of federalism: competition. States will have to compete for residents and revenue. Those that have the lowest taxes, crime, unemployment, poverty, and corruption, while providing the right set of public services most effectively, will attract the most residents. In a nationalist system, there is less competition, and it only exists between countries. This occasionally results in war and makes it more expensive and difficult for residents of oppressive governments to emigrate to other countries. There are a couple of ways we could revive federalism in the U.S. The first is public education. We could all speak up, condemning legislation at the federal level in general. If enough people spread persuasive information on this subject and advocate that voters principally vote against politicians who don't honor the 10th Amendment, our representatives will be forced to take a principled stance in support of federalism. Obviously, this solution is outlandish and temporary at best. For one thing, I highly doubt this video will reach more than 10,000 views. And, even if it did provoke a sea of viral videos that miraculously resulted in a dramatic shift in popular opinion and election of yours truly as president, the change would only be temporary. The natural progression of our political system is for the federal government to gain power and for the people to grow complacent with its perpetual expansion. The other option involves the U.S. selling or leasing land to private companies for the establishment of charter cities, as expressed in this TED Talk by Paul Romer. In the talk, Paul Romer explains how cities are just about the right size for experimental governance and how this would revive the peaceful competition and experimentation in government that our world so desperately needs. In my next video, we'll examine hypolitical forms of government that could be implemented in charter cities, including alternative voting systems that could vastly improve the overall quality of representation.